Good morning. My name is Marcia Hall. I'm the Executive Director of the Mattie Kelly Arts Foundation, whose mission is to inspire young minds through art and education. And we have a special treat for you this morning. We are bringing here today, together with the Mattie Kelly Arts Center here at the beautiful Northwest Florida State College, and Dr. Alexis Tibbetts, the Superintendent of Schools of Okaloosa County School District. So this wouldn't be possible without those partnerships. The George Rodrigue Foundation is here for a 3-day in-school residency program impacting over 5,000 students. So you're lucky today to be able to see this and witness this presentation. George Rodrigue is the international artist and creator of the famous Blue Dog paintings. And today we're going to introduce George and Wendy Rodrigue, who are here to inspire you with a story that his wife is going to explain to you behind the inspiration of the Blue Dog paintings. And so you know, she was raised in Shalimar and a graduate of Fort Walton Beach High School. So this is her home turf. So she's glad to be back home when she's not living between New Orleans, Louisiana, and their home in Carmel Valley, California. So let's give a warm welcome to George and Wendy Rodrigue.
What do you want me to paint today? Blue Dog! So I'm going to do this painting. It's going to take about 45 minutes maybe. And as I paint, my wife will talk and explain to you all how the Blue Dog came about. Because I've actually been painting all my life. I was in the 3rd grade when I got polio and I couldn't walk. And my mother brought me some paint to paint. And ever since the 3rd grade, that's all I knew how to do. So I'm still doing what I started doing from the 3rd grade, just like y'all. So I'm going to paint a blue dog, and on this thing, there's a blue dog back of this painting, and I will change it completely, so at the end of the presentation, you're going to see what is painted. And we call this a mixed media. It looks much better for you to watch me paint this than starting from scratch, because it's a little boring to paint for 4 hours. So we're going to start right now. My wife's going to talk about me as I was in the 3 years old in my Roy Rogers uniform before I started painting. So you ready?
Ready.
And then we'll have questions and answers after. And I can make as much noise as you want.
Whoa! We will definitely have time to make noise. I promise you, you will all be able to get involved. I just wanted to say first what a truly exciting thing it is for me to be back here in my home area. George and I do presentations like this all over the country, a lot of them focused in his home state of Louisiana, and we've never been to the Florida Gulf Coast. So this is really exciting. And one of the main reasons is because when I was a young student, about your age, in the 5th or 6th grade, I went to a school that's no longer here, New Heights Elementary. And the artists that we studied were all dead. Probably a lot of the same artists that you study. People like Vincent van Gogh and Monet and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. But there was one artist that we studied who was still living when I was your age, and that was Pablo Picasso. And I remember thinking how incredibly exciting it was that Picasso was still working right now and could have been painting right then while we were studying him. And I've told Mr. George so many times that for many young people, you are Picasso. And look how lucky all of you are, because not only do you get to know that he's working and painting all the time, you actually get to watch him do it. Very exciting. So let's give Mr. George a round of applause. He's already having fun. Can't you tell? He's already having fun painting. So how did he first start painting? Well, when he was a little boy, he grew up in a tiny town. much like this small town, but his town was in southwest Louisiana. It's called New Iberia, Louisiana. Little Cajun French town. Everybody spoke French there. Went to a very small school, and he got very, very sick when he was in the 3rd grade. He contracted a disease called polio, which fortunately none of you will ever have to worry about, but it meant that he couldn't walk, and he was in bed for 6 months. And you know how when you get the flu, your friends can't come over and visit you because it's very contagious? Polio was the same way. And since Mr. George was an only child, there were no brothers and sisters around his house. His father traveled when he worked, and so it was just little George and his mom. Now, what was she going to do to keep him occupied for 6 months? He couldn't play outside, couldn't see his friends, and guess what else? They didn't have a television. I know.
That was bad. That was real bad.
And they didn't have a computer. Long before computers. So what on earth, it's funny to me that the computer gets a bigger reaction than the television. And so what on earth was his mom going to do? Well, something was invented that year. You know, everything was invented at one point. Really important thing was invented that year in the early 1950s, and that was paint by number. Raise your hand if you know what paint by number is. Everybody knows what paint by number is. That's great. So George's mother brought him these paint by numbers. He'd never seen that before. And she also brought him some modeling clay. And he lay in bed and he made little animals out of his modeling clay, and he used those paint by numbers. But there was a problem. The #1 most popular scene on paint by number when it came out was The Last Supper. And let me tell you, little 8-year-old George had no interest in painting The Last Supper. And his mom brought him all these canvases and all these paints to paint The Last Supper. And he said, I don't want to paint that. I want to paint things I know and love in South Louisiana. So what was that for him? A lot of the same things you see around here. That was alligators, and that was fire trucks. And he liked things like, he liked policemen and their guns. He liked to paint that. He liked to paint his dogs. He liked to paint things that he knew and loved. And so that's where he first started, and he turned those paint by numbers over and he painted fun stuff.
That was Bozo the Clown. Anybody remember Bozo the Clown? All us old people. So I painted Bozo the Clown the first time, and I was about in the 4th grade when I painted that. Then I realized I could do anything.
That's right.
And I went to art school, and she wanted me to paint, my teacher wanted me to paint baskets of fruit, which I hated, but I had to do it anyway, because I learned how to paint grapes and bananas and corn and all that.
It's important to paint and learn as your teachers tell you, because that's how you'll learn to paint the things that you know and love best. And so Mr. George got more and more excited about art, and fortunately got completely well. And when he left his sick bed and got well and was able to play with his friends again, he said, I'm also going to paint. And so to paint, believe it or not, he joined the Boy Scouts. And he eventually became an Eagle Scout. Raise your hand if you're in scouting in this room. Ooh, we have a lot of scouts. That's really great. Mr. George was big with that. And would you believe this year he actually designed the art patch for the Boy Scouts? And we're going to show you that in just a little bit. So this is young Mr. George as an Eagle Scout. That was a really big deal. And he was painting in the Boy Scouts. This was his favorite thing to paint in the Boy Scouts. That's monsters.
Yeah. That was... This was the creature from the Black Lagoon. It came out in the movie, and all my friends wanted that on a t-shirt. And back then, no one had paintings on t-shirts or pictures on t-shirts. So I painted these, and they would bring me that t-shirt, and I would paint that on them, and I'd get $3. And I learned, hey, I can make a living doing this.
So what did he do with all that money? Well, he saved his money because he wanted to go to art school. He wanted to go to art school in California. And you know what else he wanted? Something every young person wants. A car. And he saved his money, and he spent all of his money on art school and on art books, because there was no art in South Louisiana at that time. He wasn't lucky like all of you, having arts in your classes and art books in the library and the wonderful internet where you can look all these things up. So he had to buy all these art books. And look how cool his car was. This was called a Corvair. You notice something unusual about the Corvair? The trunk is in the front, and the engine was in the back. And Mr. George, he would have to put all of his clothes in the back seat because the trunk was full of all of his books when he went to California. So when he got to California, what did he paint? Pretty cool, huh? He liked to paint cartoons. He liked to paint pop art. He liked to paint all kinds of fun things. You see the 66 over there on the right? That was in 1966 in Los Angeles. This is a really, really huge painting, actually. And this was Mr. George starting to get his ideas of where he wanted to go. And I hope you can see how something like that might lead to the Blue Dog, which we're going to get to shortly. So after he left art school, what happened? Well, Mr. George, unlike all of his friends went on to New York City, because that's the big place to be an artist, but he said, no, I want to go home. I want to go home to my small town just like this one. You know why? Because when he was in California, he realized how unique and special his hometown really is. How it's like no other place on earth, just like where you live right here. And he said, I want to capture it. So in the 1960s, he goes back to Louisiana, and what does he find? Around his hometown, not everybody's driving a car. Some people were still using horse and buggies. And he took pictures of the horse and buggies, and he painted them. And in the early paintings, when Mr. George was about 22 years old, that's all he painted. And then he said, you know what? I'm going to drop the horse and buggy, and I'm going to drop the cabins, and I'm just going to paint the tree. And I'm going to make the tree like my Superman, like my Andy Warhol Campbell soup can. I'm going to make it my symbol. Now, why did he do that? Well, in that nice car of his, he would drive back from California, and he would cross the big state of Texas. And what is Texas famous for? Big skies, right? But I hope a lot of you have been to Louisiana. Raise your hand if you've been to Louisiana. Oh, fabulous. So you all know what I'm talking about. You get into Louisiana from Texas, and suddenly the sky is small. And Mr. George says, why is it small? Because you're looking at it from underneath the oak trees. And so he explored this idea. Look, there's young George with his oak trees. In fact, here's that young Mr. George painting his portrait with an oak tree to show everybody he could paint. Because people said, oh, you paint his trees. He painted thousands and thousands of trees. And this is from last year. He still paints the trees, even while he's painting the Blue Dog. So how did he make the sky small in the trees? He did something very clever. He cut it off at the top so that the light shines from underneath and in the distance. Made it very symbolic and very special and very representative of Louisiana, and no one had ever done that before. So I think it's pretty inspiring for all of you young artists out there that even something that you might think is boring, like a landscape, you can take and do something completely unique with. Now, one day he wondered, what does a person look like who walks out from behind one of those trees? This was Mr. George's very first painting ever with people. Isn't that amazing? All those portraits, his grandfather's in there and his uncle. It's an old gourmet dinner club from the 1920s in South Louisiana, and he painted it from old photographs. Kind of cool, huh? So he painted a lot of Cajun people, and this is what led to the Blue Dog, in fact. That's why it's important to have some of this background. He wondered, what would a person look like who walked out from behind one of his trees? Well, he thought they'd be kind of caught in the trees. They'd be trapped in the landscape. George's history, the Cajun people, originally came from France in the 1600s and then to Canada, and then in the 1750s from Canada down to South Louisiana. So he saw his heritage, his ancestors, as having been cut out of places, out of France and out of Canada, and pasted onto Louisiana. And so that's how he painted them. What's also really important is that See how white they are? They're not in shadow. These are some barbers, by the way, that spent so much money on their barber chairs that they couldn't afford a barber shop, so they cut hair under the trees. And see how white they are? That's because Mr. George says they glow with the Cajun culture. It's their spirit shining out, just like I see your spirit in all your smiles out there. This was a very famous painting by Mr. George called Jolie Blonde. He's painted her hundreds and hundreds of times. She's a wonderful Cajun legend and song. And this is a more contemporary version of her that he did in the computer. He loves the computer. I bet all of you love the computer. Yes, he uses it like a paintbrush. He can design paintings in the computer and silk screens in the computer, and he can use some of his old stuff to design them. He loves to work with the blue dog in the computer. She's also very famous, Evangeline, kind of the Cajun heroine who came from Canada into South Louisiana, trying to find a new home for herself. And finally, this painting right here was done the same year as the first blue dog painting, in 1984. And this is how Mr. George saw America. And that says the West. That's the Indians, the Cajuns, and the cowboys. And look what he did, very clever. You see that oak tree we've been talking about in the back? And its branches spread to either side? He's trying to make them look like eagle's wings, like the American eagle, with these three wonderful cultures that make up America. The other thing that was going on at this time when Mr. George was growing up is that you couldn't learn a second language. I bet a lot of you are learning another language. Very important. In his school, and I already told you that his community was very French, they were afraid that the kids would grow up without learning to speak English. So he would get in trouble if he spoke French in school. You were punished. Not anymore today, of course. And if you ask Mr. George what made him famous in Louisiana, he would tell you festival posters. He painted tons of them. And you know what I think is fun? He likes to paint from photographs. The blue dog is from a photograph. He would take his friends and he would make them dress up like this in the backyard. He would take pictures of them and then paint them like this for Mardi Gras. And I hope you know who this is, long before your time, but very important. This is President Ronald Reagan. Mr. George has painted lots of presidents. This hung in the White House. And you can be very clever with art. You know what he did? When he photographed President Reagan had a really droopy horse. His head was way down low and he didn't look very presidential. So Mr. George went to his photo books and he found a great photograph of a very famous singing cowboy, Gene Autry, on his very famous horse. And he just cut off his head and put Ronald Reagan on it. So you can be very clever in your art. And there he is with President Reagan in the painting. And there he is with President Clinton, Vice President Al Gore, and guess what they wanted? They asked to be painted with the blue dog. And this is a very famous Louisianian. Mr. George likes to paint famous people from his hometown, especially his friends. And this is Chef Paul Prudhomme. Look how he's glowing white under that oak tree. And Chef Paul Prudhomme is part of a festival I wanted to tell you about because it's such an amazing thing. It takes place in Abbeville, Louisiana. It's called the Great Cajun Omelet Festival. They make an omelet with 5,000 eggs. And 10,000 gallons of milk. And they put it all together and they feed the whole town every year on Easter Sunday. Kind of fun, huh? Pretty tricky to flip that omelet, I think. This was also done the year of the very first blue dog painting. This is a Fado Joe. It's the Cajun dancers. Pretty fun. You probably saw Mr. George's son walking around up here getting things ready earlier. That's him, right there dancing with his little LSU girlfriend. And this is the very first blue dog painting. The first one. It was painted in 1984, and it was for a book of ghost stories. And one of the stories was called The Loup-Garou. And the Loup-Garou was very scary. When George was a little boy in New Iberia, his mom used to tell him things like, if you're not good today, the Loup-Garou is going to come tonight and eat you. It was really scary. And Mr. George said, oh, well, I'd like to paint that loup-garou for this book of ghost stories, because it was a famous story. And he said, but what am I going to use? Because it was kind of like the boogeyman. Imagine if I asked everybody in this room to paint the boogeyman for me. I think you'd all probably paint something different, right? You don't know really what the boogeyman looks like. Well, the loup-garou was the same way. So Mr. George said, I've got some great pictures of my dog. Maybe I'll use her for the loup-garou. But he had to make her kind of scary looking, right? But he had great pictures of her. Sadly, she was already dead at this time, but he had taken many, many photos of her. And notice what's important about this photograph. It's the same thing that's important about this painting that he's working on right here, and that is that the dog is eye level. Usually when we think about a dog, we think about it down here at our feet, right? But Mr. George would lie down in the grass and take pictures of Tiffany head on so that she's like a person. And now when he paints the blue dog, he can have a communication with it like a person. It's not like a dog at all. He doesn't even think about dogs when he's painting anymore. He thinks about shape and design and ideas. This is a very early one. All of the early blue dog paintings, these were about 25 years ago, were painted in the bayou. They were painted in cemeteries and in sugarcane fields, on tombstones, and Mr. George thought that the dark night sky would cast this blue-gray shade on the dog's fur. The early ones also had red eyes because they were scary. Nothing scary about it anymore, huh? And then he started having fun because he kind of liked the idea of this blue dog. And he heard other people call it blue dog instead of loup-garou, and he thought, that's kind of interesting. It's a different entity. Maybe it doesn't have to be so scary. He changed the eyes to yellow, and he started playing with different animals and ideas. This is called, Have You Ever Loved Somebody Who Just Couldn't Love You? And this is a very important painting because this is the very first one that Mr. George painted without the oak tree. The very first time that the blue dog left Louisiana. And guess what? When he did this painting, this is a gigantic painting, he thought, oh my gosh, that really worked. And if the blue dog can leave Louisiana and be on its own, it can be and do and say anything. This is called, My Baby Made a Clown Out of Me. And this is called, I Ain't No Cartoon Dog. The blue dog is a man. And this is important to remember because the blue dog is not a cartoon. You remember, you've never seen the back side of it. You've never seen its tail. You've never seen it run or move. Doesn't ever have a blip coming out of its mouth talking. It's very much a shape. It's very much an icon. So for Mr. George, it's very interesting because he uses that shape like you might use a circle or you might use a square to play it against different shapes. Look at all the wonderful shapes within this painting that he's playing with. And of course, the wonderful colors. This is called Space Chair. Because if the blue dog can leave Louisiana, it can go anywhere in the universe, even staying comfortable in its easy chair. And this one, what do you think of that? That's called the Rat Pack, blue dog on the open road. Pretty fun. And how about this blue dog in Hawaii? That's called Hawaiian Blues. And look what happened. All these butterflies on the left side fly across the painting and form a lei around the dog's neck. You know, like they do with flowers in Hawaii. How about that one? Blue dog in outer space. Blue dog on a barn. This is actually a barn in Connecticut. Mr. George did a whole campaign a number of years ago for a company called Xerox, and they let him paint anything that he wanted for this campaign, and they put his work all over the world, not only on billboards, but also on barns, just like that. It was really fun. And what about this? I hope some of you recognize this wonderful musician. This is Louis Armstrong, and he's, of course, from New Orleans, played the trumpet. It was wonderful, and this is the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival poster from 1995. And Mr. George, it was funny, when they asked him to paint the Jazz Fest poster, he said, only if I can paint Louis Armstrong. And they said, well, you can't paint him because he died before the festival started, and we only paint people who play in the festival. And he said, then I'm not doing it. And they said, but we want the blue dog. And he said, I tell you what, you can have the blue dog in the festival poster if I can have Louis Armstrong. That's what happened. Look at that one, in your face. Now this is Mr. George telling you, if you haven't figured it out yet, that he is an abstract artist. He paints shapes and designs and colors. This painting took him months and months. He set himself a big challenge to paint this. It's actually 4 canvases. Oh, great, that looks good. Divided up like this, you can really see that he's done all these interesting shapes, and it's called dependence because each shape depends on the other to make it look like the blue dog. He was so tired after he painted this painting, and he was so tight, you know when you work on something and you get all tense, that he exploded. And he painted a whole series of paintings called Hurricanes. And this was long before Hurricane Katrina came to the Gulf Coast. This was many years before. This was Mr. George really thinking about the power of Mother Nature and things swirling up. And he thought, well, the blue dog and also the oak trees, if that one has an oak tree caught in it, can you see that? On the right there? Could get caught up in these swirling paintings. He did 70 of them in a row, and you know how he described it? He said, you know how when you have something that you just have to get out of your system? That's what this was. And what's nice is that in the museum here, there's 5 or 6 of these on view, so you can take a good look. And then sometimes the hurricane with the blue dog. Blue dog got swooped up in one. Now this painting was very, very special. Mr. George did this right after Hurricane Katrina to raise money for people that needed it all along the Gulf Coast. This is called We Will Rise Again. And you know how he did this? So very clever. He used the computer to make this. He went to a friend's swimming pool and he photographed the water. And then he went into his computer and played with the water so it got just so. Then he printed out the water on a huge canvas. And then he came back and he painted the American flag and the blue dog on it. The idea was that the flag is still underwater, but it's raising out like the blue dog because we're going to rise again. And indeed, we all did. And this was also after Hurricane Katrina. This one's called We Are Marching Again because everything is just fine.
That's the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
And who's going to win the Super Bowl? New Orleans Saints. I also painted, is this in here? Drew Brees? I also painted Drew Brees before he won the Super Bowl with the blue dog. And you have to go to New Orleans to see that one.
But we have something really cool coming up.
Okay.
That I think will
I'm
be
almost
really exciting.
finished.
So are we? That's perfect. So, this is the blue dog just can't get its act together on this day, trying to pull itself together. Can't become a shape anymore. Mr. George was having a rough day that day. And this was painted just last year, and this is a great place because we've kind of come full circle. Because look, there's the oak trees we talked about in the very, very beginning, with the blue dog painted like a Cajun person, as though the blue dog came out from behind the oak trees. And this was painted just this year. Look at Mr. George looking back at his early paintings. So wouldn't you say that in some ways Mr. George has become the blue dog? He's the blue dog man? Yeah. I think so. This is this year. Look at that. So again, you don't have to paint your trees brown with green leaves. You don't have to paint your dog black and white or brown. You can use your imagination to paint things any way that you want. And that's what Mr. George does all the time. And if you really look at it, you can see that it's all about him having fun with colors and designs and shapes. Look at this one. This is a sculpture. Now remember I said the blue dog doesn't have a back side? This sculpture has 3 fronts. Every side looks just like that. But one is painted yellow, one is painted red, and one is painted blue. And you remember in the very beginning, we talked about Mr. George's love of cars. Well, he studied automotive design. He wanted to design cars for a living. And so, when he made this sculpture, he made it like a car. It's made of steel and chrome and aluminum, and it sits in our backyard. And you know how I wash it? With a bucket of soapy water and the hose. It's exactly like a car. And there is one 30 feet tall. That's really, really tall. And that's in front of Lakeside Mall in New Orleans. If you get over there, go take a look at it. This is Mr. George painting much like he is for you today. Painting on chrome and having fun. So he doesn't always paint at his easel. Sometimes he just plays and he takes paint straight out of the can with big brushes and just has a good time. You don't always have to be serious. You can always have fun. Mr. George, why don't you tell them about this one?
Well, if you see on the neckerchief, there's a small blue dog. And I was in a Boy Scouts, and I did that painting for the Boy Scouts to raise money for the Boy Scouts. And it's a Boy Scout eagle with the neckerchief, Boy Scout neckerchief on.
And it hangs in the official Boy Scouts Museum in Dallas. So if you get to Dallas and you go to the Scouting Museum, you can see it. And I'll tell you something really special. This is what's on the art patch for the Boy Scouts this year. Kind of fun. And also this year, the Boy Scouts gave Mr. George a very special award. They named him a Distinguished Eagle. They only name 6 people in the country a Distinguished Eagle every year. And George was the first person in Louisiana in 25 years to get that award. And I told you in the beginning how important scouting was to him. It was really, really exciting. And the most special thing about it was when he got his Eagle Scout, when he was 16, he had the mumps, so he didn't get pinned. This year he felt real good, and guess what? His old Scoutmaster at 99 years old came and pinned him with his eagle. Yeah, that's pretty great. So this is a brand new painting, and this is called Blue Dogs and Cajuns on the River, because Mr. George says the Cajuns are red hot like alligators. So that's the Cajun, the red dog. The red alligator. And look how it's exactly like what we talked about in the beginning with the tree cut off at the top. Is that a river or is that a road? And that's not a little blue dog down by your feet. That's a big dog in your face, and it has something to say, don't you think?
Do y'all watch Swamp People? Yeah! Well, this is one of the alligators that got away. The nice, friendly alligator called Herman.
It's called Herman the Alligator.
Herman the Alligator.
Whoa! Now I have to tell you, and then I'm going to let Mr. George tell you about this. You are the very first people anywhere to see this painting. We put it in special for you to see, and I want Mr. George to tell you about it.
Well, my new best friend is Sylvester Stallone. He came into the gallery and brought a bunch of paintings, and he asked me if I would paint him as Rocky III with the blue dog, and I did it. And the painting is about 7 feet high, and it's still hanging in the gallery. We deliver it to his house in about 2 weeks. And I worked about three, 4 weeks on it, and we're going to make a print of it. And he donated all the rights to the print to our foundation. So you're the first ones to see this.
Okay, so Mr. George just mentioned our foundation. We have a great foundation that's very similar to your wonderful Mattie Kelly Foundation here. We have art camps for kids if you want to come over next summer with your parents and spend a week in New Orleans and go to our camp. This is a picture from this last year, and they make all kinds of wonderful projects. And I think what we should do now, with the foundation, we have some really great books. And I thought it might be fun to get you all involved if we could read a couple of these books, but I need your help. I think it would be fun to have you call out some of the answers. So when I go like this, you can call out the answers. But when I go like this, it means we all got to get quiet again to go on to the next page. Can we try it? Yeah. Okay, we'll give it a try. This is George's son, Jacques. Okay, this is Mr. George has done 15 books. This is my very, very favorite one, and I think you're going to agree. This is called Why is Blue Dog Blue? You ready? Hello, this is George, and he's an artist. He has been painting since he was 5 years old. He paints pictures of things he likes. Remember we talked about that. Here he is with fire trucks. It's kind of hard to make out, but he's got fire trucks behind him. One of his favorite things to paint is Blue Dog. Why is Blue Dog blue? Well, artists don't have to paint things the way they really are. George can use his imagination to paint his own world. He can paint a dog any color he can imagine. So why is Blue Dog blue? Well, the truth is, Blue Dog isn't always blue. Sometimes Blue Dog is red. Great, you guys are real cute. Other times he paints Blue Dog yellow. Occasionally he paints Blue Dog green. Once in a while he paints Blue Dog and he never paints Blue Dog purple, except for when he does. He can paint a Blue Dog rainbow. But most of the time, he paints Blue Dog blue, which brings us back to the original question. Why is Blue Dog blue? Let's try it one more time. Why is Blue Dog blue? Great. Maybe it has to do with what Mr. George thinks about when he paints. Okay, it's going to get kind of tricky here. You ready? What color does George paint Blue Dog when he goes fishing? Okay, you've been reading this book in school. Salmon! That's great! You guys are perfect. Oh, this is my favorite, because this is Mr. George's favorite. What color does he paint Blue Dog when he wants a hot dog, which is every day? Mustard! That's right! Okay, let's try another one. What color does he paint Blue Dog when he bakes a pie? Cherry! Okay, now what other colors maybe when he bakes a pie? Like maybe blueberry or coconut or lemon? Those were all good answers and all yummy pies. This is my favorite. What color does Mr. George paint Blue Dog when he goes to the beach? How about tan? Okay, now what if poor Mr. George forgets his sunscreen? Red, that's right. Ooh, what color does Mr. George paint Blue Dog if he, falls in the swamp? Moss green. What happened to Blue Dog's tail in this one? He became like that Herman the alligator, huh? Okay, you can call these out. What other colors can he paint Blue Dog? Those were all wonderful, wonderful answers, and you're all absolutely right. We can paint Blue Dog any color. And those colors that you named were all very, very pretty. But Blue Dog is blue. Why? Look in the sky. Blue Dog is everywhere, like the sky. That's why. Look at little George. Okay, now we do have one more book, but we don't want to run out of time so that we don't get to ask your questions. And I know a lot of you have questions. So the way we're going to do this, I want to introduce, this is my sister, Miss Heather. She's also from here. Hi, Miss Heather. And she is going to come around with the microphone so you can ask your question.
I'd like to take a question from this side right here first.
Okay.
What made you paint Blue Dog?
Oh my God. Because I like to. And it was my old dog. I had him for 10 years and I got lonesome and I wanted to recreate him and now he's with me forever.
Great question, thank you.
Why'd you paint Blue Dog different colors, not just blue?
That's a great
That's
question.
a good question. Well, at first, I started painting it as my wife said, it was a loup-garou. It was a Cajun werewolf dog. And it was blue at first because I painted a big blue moon first, and the moon cast a shadow, cast a light on the dog. The dog was actually white when he was alive. And I made it bluish green dog. And then I realized that I could paint it other colors. The first color I painted was red because everybody has a good side to them and we have a bad side to them. So the dog was the same thing. So I started painting the dog red sometimes to show that he had two sides. Then there's a middle side because we have many sides to us. So whatever color I paint the blue dog, people still say it's the blue dog.
Thank you.
Good question.
That's a great question. Okay.
Do you like to paint light colors and dark colors together?
Do you like to paint light colors and dark colors together?
Yes, when I do a demonstration like this, you see the paint stays very wet here. And it has to dry. I have to wait like 2 hours before it dries. Then I can go and paint lighter colors or darker colors on top of that. But for demonstration purposes, it has to be very bright and I have to do things that the colors don't really mix. But I like to paint, and some of the paintings show you that all different colors.
Okay, I have a very anxious little girl in a polka dot skirt back here.
What's your favorite picture to paint?
That's a good question. I always get asked that question, what's my favorite painting? Well, my answer is, my most favorite painting is always the painting I'm working on now. Because after a painting is like a puzzle. And when you finish the painting, you have solved the problem. You have solved the puzzle. You put the puzzle together. So I've just solved this puzzle. Now this afternoon, I have to go paint another painting. And that's going to be my most favorite painting. And as long as the painting I'm working on now is the most favorite painting, then to me it's my best painting. So that's my answer.
Okay, here's the next question.
Did you just plan to paint that, or did you just paint it?
I painted it, first I wanted to put a hat on it. And I have no preconceived ideas when I come up and paint a painting, because I want it to be fresh in my mind. Some paintings I have to work on a sketch pad and do that, but I don't like to really do that. I like to make the paintings very spontaneous, and the more spontaneous it is, the more special it is to me. So I had no idea what I was going to paint, and I didn't know how it was going to look, and I just wanted it bright for all of y'all to see, and it's a big happy day.
What is your favorite color?
Blue!
What's the biggest painting of Blue Dog did you do?
The biggest painting was probably 8 feet by 14 feet. And it's 3 blue dogs, a blue dog, a white blue dog, and a red blue dog. And it's hanging in a collector's house in Houston, Texas.
Where do you get your ideas?
The problem with me is I have so many ideas, I don't know where they come from. And that's, as an artist, that's what you have to do. You have to just have full of ideas.
Why do you like to paint?
I guess I was born loving the paint. You know, I didn't realize it until I was in the 3rd grade, but I just kept painting all my life, and it's really satisfying.
When you made a painting of a soup can that you got inspired by Andy Warhol, did you ever make a Blue Dog painting for Andy Warhol?
No, I didn't make them, never made them, but I got inspired to do that because he had I used the Campbell soup can of chili, and so it was like a hot dog of chili. And that's what because I call myself a pop artist because I paint popular culture, and that's what Andy Warhol did. Andy Warhol did popular objects and made art into it. I've come along and I've invented my own popular object itself, and that's the difference.
Okay, let me see here. You want to do yours?
If someone ever asked you a question, would you ever hug them?
Heather, you better give her a hug. You go back here.
Why do you paint a dog instead of like a pig?
Pig. No, pig. As a Cajun, I grew up eating pig. A boucherie is the pig roast, and I never got attached to a pig. I might paint a pig. Never know.
How many more questions do you want to do? Are you doing okay? Okay. Little boy friend.
Is it Blue Dog's birthday?
Blue Dog's birthday? I don't remember when. I started painting Blue Dog in 1984. So the first one was done for the World's Fair in New Orleans. So what is that? How long ago? And at the same time I painted Blue Dog for about 5 years. At the same time I was painting my Cajun paintings. And so it took a long time to develop. Anything in the arts, you don't know exactly where you're going to go with it and what you're going to do with it. It has to develop over a long period of time. So it only took me, people say, oh, you painted this in 25 or 30 minutes, but it's taken me 40 years to do this.
Do you ever make a blue dog look more like a girl?
Yes, I have a blue dog, a girl blue dog, and a boy blue dog. The girl blue dog, I put flowers on her head, and the boy blue dog, I put a tie.
There are so many great questions I'm having
Really
trouble.
great question.
What made you start painting?
Well, I was sick. I was sick in bed, and I didn't know I really could paint, and I had nothing to do for 4 months, and so I started painting because I was sick in bed. I started painting and modeling with clay.
How did your paintings get in the museum?
It's a good question. Basically, the museums have to ask you for one of your paintings. So you have to start to become famous. And that takes a long time because when you're starting out, not many museums want your paintings. And I'm happy to say now I'm in about 22 museums. And
Okay.
we have museum shows.
Let's take one more question and then we're going to read the other book. Okay, last one.
Okay, one more question.
Whatever paint. What a. What other paint by numbers did you do?
Oh, well, when my mother bought me this paint by number set, I didn't like the paint by numbers because I didn't like those little bitty little spaces you had to fill in. So I actually turned the canvas around and used the paint and painted my own painting in the back of the paint by number set. So I've never really painted a paint by number set. I used the back, and then I realized after a while that I could buy paint. You didn't have to buy the set, you could buy paint and paint when I want.
Okay, we're going to read this book right quick, and then we'll have time for a few more questions. Sound good? You going to help me again? This is called Are You Blue Dog's Friend? How about it? Are you Blue Dog's friend? We're off to a good start. Hello, this is George, and he's an artist. This is him as a young boy. Look at Mr. George on that big blue bull right there with big yellow eyes. This is Blue Dog. Blue Dog is one of Mr. George's very favorite things to paint. But you already knew that. He also likes to paint things that are important to him, like his hometown of New Iberia, Louisiana. We talked a lot about this already earlier today. The Fado Dough and the festivals. But his favorite things to paint are Blue Dog's friends. Okay, here we go with some questions. Are Blue Dog's friends loyal? Yes, everyone knows that dogs are loyal, but so are Clarence and Clotilde and Camille the cats. Are Blue Dog's friends funny? Yes! Blue Dog gets into monkey business with Maurice. Are Blue Dog's friends musical? Yes, Blue Dog can be a hound dog like Elvis. And he sings jazz with Louis Armstrong. What do you think? Are Blue Dog's friends out of this world? Yes, when Blue Dog visits his friends in space, he dresses like an astronaut. Are Blue Dog's friends tricksters? During Mardi Gras, Blue Dog and his friends dress up like clowns. Just like today, in fact, not only at Mardi Gras. Are Blue Dog's friends always with him? Yes. Well, it sometimes seems that way, but Mr. George often paints Blue Dog all by himself. Is Blue Dog lonely without his friends? Is Blue Dog blue? Actually, no. Blue Dog is never lonely. Why? Because he's with you. Thank you very much. Just a quick little book, but it was fun. Okay, and you guys are so lucky because we have time for just a few more questions. Ready? Gosh.
Have you ever thought of making a blue dog cat?
Actually, you have a blue cat.
Yes, I painted cats over the years because sometimes Blue Dog needs a friend, so sometimes I paint a blue cat, a yellow cat, or an orange cat. And some of them are in the book.
Would you ever paint Blue Dog with your wife?
I did. I have done that already. Yes, I've done.
Does your wife like to paint?
Do I make you paint? Do I make him paint?
Do you like to paint?
Oh, do I like to paint? Oh, I can't paint at all.
My wife likes to write. She has a blog. If you look up her blog, Wendy
Wendy Rodrigue, I don't even know my blog, wendyrodrigue.com. Come and visit me on my blog.
and she writes about me every week, and she's written it for 2 years. So you can read all the answers and questions that she asks me at night, just like you asked me.
How many paintings have you painted?
I probably painted about 9,000 paintings. And 30, but it took 35 years.
Have you ever spray painted a painting?
Yes, early on I used to spray paint paintings, but I couldn't control it enough, so I don't like to spray paint.
When did you start painting?
When did you first start painting?
Well, I started painting when I was in the 3rd grade. I knew how I found out that anything I could think of I could paint. And so in the 3rd grade. So all the y'all can start painting right now.
How do your paintings relate to your life?
How do your paintings relate to your life?
That's a very good question. My paintings is my life. And I think every artist should paint his life. And as you see, I have a very happy life today because all my paintings are very happy. And when disasters like Katrina happen or 9/11 happen, I paint very somber paintings. So my life is really part of my painting.
Why do you paint blue dog?
It makes me happy.
Makes them happy.
What inspired you to paint blue dog with people?
What inspired
yeah.
you to paint blue dog with people?
As I started painting Blue Dog, I realized Blue Dog needed some friends, and I started painting it with other animals, and then other people, especially presidents, wanted me to paint the Blue Dog with them. So I didn't realize that people wanted to actually be put in a painting with the Blue Dog. So that's what I was asked to do that.
Why do you never draw blue dog talking?
Why do you never draw blue dog talking?
Blue Dog has become a symbol. The Blue Dog doesn't move. It's always the same shape. Because if I made it move, it would become a cartoon like Snoopy or Mickey Mouse. And that's not what it is. It's a piece of art. And I change the inside of it all the time. So that's why I can't move or I can't talk.
Why did you get sick?
I didn't know why I got sick. I was, sometimes that happens.
Why don't you also paint blue dog ketchup when you want a hot dog?
I will do that.
Have you ever painted blue dog with President Obama?
No, not yet. I've painted 5 presidents, and you have to be asked to paint the president. So he hasn't asked me to paint him yet. I painted Bill Clinton, I painted George Bush, I painted Ronald Reagan. Started painting politicians with Louisiana politicians first. Huey Long, Earl Long, and the presidents caught on to it and asked me to paint themselves.
What are you going to do with that painting?
What am I going to do with this painting? Well, I'm gonna bring it back to the studio in New Orleans, and I'm gonna let it dry, and I'm gonna work probably 1 or 2 days more on it. I'm gonna add a lot of things to it, and we're gonna put a frame on it, and we're gonna put it in the gallery, and someone's gonna buy it.
Okay, we can take one more question.
Okay. Oh.
Do you like watercolors?
I like watercolors. I used to paint a lot in watercolors, but I don't like watercolors. And watercolors is very hard to paint with. It's really hard to paint with. I like acrylic. It's a lot easier because I can change. That's it. Well, I want to thank all of you. And the big question is, do you like this painting? Well, thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed being here, and I really enjoyed painting this for you. And I hope you learned something. And all of you young artists out there, keep painting, and maybe one day you'll be painting all your life like I am, because it's a wonderful life. And you don't paint blue dogs, though. Paint blue pigs, blue alligators, green carrots, or whatever you want to paint. And thank you for coming, and good day.